Greetings and welcome to Political Empire. I'm your host, Kim Pearsall with the Press Enterprise and PE.com. And we're going to devote an entire episode today about the unrest that's happening in the Middle East and what's caused it and what's currently going on and politically how that's changed some of the campaigns going forward. It feels like an understatement to call it unrest after a reportedly badly dubbed, low-quality trailer for a movie called the, quote, Innocence of Muslims was posted to YouTube and noticed by Muslims particularly incensed by the film's portrayal of the Prophet Muhammed. Violence has ensued. Among those killed was Ambassador to Libya Christopher Stevens, although it's still not clear if he was killed because of the movie trailer or if it was a pre-planned attack. But before Stevens' death was reported, the political campaign machinations were in full swing. The White House condemned the violence, but also condemned the video that had sparked outrage. The Romney campaign accused the White House then, and thus candidate Barack Obama, of being weak and apologizing for something that should never cause the masses to erupt in madness the way they did. Inland Congressman Ken Galvert was one of the few who backed up Romney's statement. Here to tell us more about that is Ben Goad from Washington, D.C. Ben, thanks so much for joining us today.
Great to be with you.
Fantastic. Now, Ben, what exactly did Calvert say in support of Romney's statement?
Well, first off, Kim, I think it's important to note that the administration's statement that's come under fire was posted by the U.S. Embassy in Cairo prior to the attacks in Egypt and Libya. Basically, what the embassy said was that, quote, we firmly reject the actions of those who believe the universal right of free speech to hurt religious beliefs of others. So basically, they knew there was unrest, and they put this statement out. And then in the wake of the attacks, Romney and Calvert sounded off. And Mr. Calvert said that he called the statement an embarrassment and a disgrace. He said, quote, it conveys weakness and an apologist attitude when we have nothing to apologize for. Basically, what he's saying is the administration oversees these embassies, and their failure to take that down from the embassy's website amounted to weakness.
Well, and like you noted, the statement by the White House and the embassy was made prior to the reporting of the ambassador's death and the attacks and the killings and so forth. Romney has still stood by his statement, though, even though it's been reported that he may have misinterpreted what the White House said, and even fellow Republicans distanced themselves from the presidential candidate. Has Calvert stood by his statement, and also what's been happening with Romney's campaign as a result of that statement?
Yeah, well, when I spoke with Calvert, that was after the attacks were clear, and he said, it's not that he's defending the video per se. He hadn't even seen it. He's saying a free speech issue. He says, we live in a country that believes in free speech, and we shouldn't be apologizing for that. So, yeah, I think he's standing by what he said. As for the Romney campaign, they've really tried to build this narrative that President Obama has engaged in an apology tour since he won office 4 years ago, and this is sort of the latest incarnation of that. Some Democrats have become very critical of Romney for criticizing the president at a time when there's a national tragedy going on, and I think most observers would say that Romney probably didn't benefit from inserting himself into the situation there.
Well, Ben, thanks so much for the update on the political side of things, what's going on. We're now going to talk to David Olson, who's been covering this from a religious standpoint, multicultural standpoint. The violence was started ostensibly by this one badly made film that aimed to represent Muhammad as a womanizer, a molester, a moron. The filmmakers, after being outed with their real names and locations in Southern California, have gone into hiding. But before they started their movie, they consulted with Steve Klein, a Hemet insurance salesman and longtime critic of Islam. David, you spoke with Steve Klein. You cover religion issues for the newspaper. Mm-hmm. What's Klein's history in the inland region? Because it sounds like he has a storied history, especially related to anti-Islamic efforts.
He's actually been involved in leafleting Inland Empire, actually, and not just in Inland Empire, mosques and high schools across Southern California, and actually he's even gone into parts of Northern California. And the leaflets, I've seen copies of them, and they're they show Muhammad as a pedophile, as someone who's committed incest and committed genocide, and again, they were distributed first mainly to mosques and then to high schools. And he told me that he was distributing the mosques so Muslims would find out the truth about their religion, in his own words, and that to high schools we could warn high school students who are being brainwashed by what he saw as a politically correct education system to find out about the truth of Islam.
And you're saying too that he hasn't just done this locally, he's also involved in a TV show that's filmed in Duarte, which is kind of close by. It's in Southern California, just outside of LA. What are those activities?
Exactly. It's pretty chilling video. I saw an episode, for example, from just a few weeks ago, August 30th, in which he says, "I hate Islam," and he basically, in a sense, wants to see Islam wiped off the face of the earth. The most chilling part, I think, for me, was when he introduced a video in which a guy is singing about guns and shooting off guns, and he introduces it by saying, "This is going to be the ultimate solution to the Muslims." So it's pretty scary stuff.
When you spoke with him, I think it was the day after folks started finding out who was behind the film, when you went out to Hemet and sat down with him. It was an extensive interview. We have a clip of it online, and folks can see it on PE.com. But what did he think of essentially the unrest that's occurred because of that film's release?
Well, I asked him about that, and he never quite answered in terms of what he expected from the video. He knew there'd be a reaction to it, but he didn't quite, he was sort of hemming and hawing in terms of exactly what he expected. But I did ask him, don't you feel some responsibility? And he said, you're responsible for your actions, not me. And he said, I've never gone out and killed anyone, assaulted anyone. It's not on me, basically.
And to clarify, too, what was his role with the film?
He was a consultant. One thing he did was he consulted on the script. Most of the folks involved with this film were not native English speakers, and so he was also just, giving them, going over the English to make sure it was correct English, and reviewing the script to make sure it had, in his mind, correct information about Islam. And then also just some advice about strategy and things on those lines. So it wasn't actually involved in the filmmaking itself.
They met with me, they asked me some questions, they consulted with me because they're from the Middle East and they didn't understand the First Amendment, they didn't understand the culture of America, and they wanted to get an American's point of view to consult with them.
And part of it had to do with First Amendment free speech issues, correct?
Exactly, that's a good point. He also, some of the filmmakers were concerned, hey, is this going to land me in jail? And he said no, it is protected by the First Amendment, which indeed I think almost most legal scholars say it is. Yeah.
Right, it hasn't kept them from going into hiding though, so.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, David, thanks so much for the update, appreciate it. It's quite the issue and I'm sure we're going to be following it more. And thank you for watching another edition of Political Empire, and we'll see you on Monday.